The night sky over Seoul was filled with strange lights. They were not stars, they were not airplanes, they were something else, something that had changed everything. Stood on the rooftop of the old observatory building. The wind was cold against her face, but she did not move. Her eyes were fixed on the lights above. They were moving away, slowly at first, then faster and faster until they became nothing more than tiny dots disappearing into the darkness. The aliens were leaving. For 3 months, the world had watched in fear and wonder as massive ships floated above every major city on Earth. The beings inside called themselves the. They were tall creatures with skin and large black eyes. They spoke in cold voices and showed no emotion. They had studied humanity like scientists study insects under a microscope. Was a young astrophysicist. She had spent her entire career searching for signs of intelligent life beyond Earth. When they arrived, she thought her dreams had come true. She thought this was the beginning of a new age for humanity. She was wrong. They had not come to help. They had not come to share their knowledge or their technology. They had come to watch, to observe, to judge. And now they were leaving without saying goodbye. Park Jin stood beside on the rooftop. He was a military officer, tall and strong with sharp eyes that had seen too many battles. He had been assigned to protect the scientists at the observatory during the visit. Now he watched the alien ships disappear with his fists clenched tight. "They are really leaving," said. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. Jin nodded slowly. "Yes, they are." "But why? Why did they come here just to leave? What was the point of all this?" Jin did not answer right away. He had attended the meetings between world leaders and the commanders. He had heard things that the public did not know, things that kept him awake at night. "They came to study us," he finally said, "to see if we were worth saving." Turned to look at him. "Worth saving, what do you mean?" Jin took a deep breath. The cold air filled his lungs. "They told our leaders something terrible. They said that our sun is dying, not now but soon. In about 200 years there will be massive solar flares, the kind that will burn away our atmosphere and boil our oceans. They said nothing on Earth will survive." Felt her heart stop. She was a scientist. She understood what solar flares could do. She had studied the sun for years, but she had never predicted anything like this. "That cannot be true," she said. "Our instruments would have detected something." "Their technology is far beyond ours," Jin replied. "They showed our scientists the data. It is real. The sun will kill us all in 2 centuries. His legs felt weak. She grabbed the railing to steady herself. "Then why are they leaving? If they know this, why are they not helping us? They have ships that can travel between stars. They could evacuate us. They could save us." Jin laughed, but there was no humor in his voice. It was a bitter, angry sound. "That is what our leaders asked them. They begged for help. Do you know what their commander said?" Shook her head. "He said that humanity is too primitive, too violent, too divided. He said we are not worth the resources it would take to save us. He said that the galaxy is full of species and not all of them deserve to survive. He said that our extinction is simply natural selection." The words hit like a punch to the stomach. She felt sick. She felt angry. She felt more afraid than she had ever felt in her entire life. "They just decided we should die, without even giving us a chance." "They do not see us as equals," Jin said. "To them, we are nothing, just another failed species on another doomed planet. They will seal our location in their records and mark us as a dead zone. In a few generations, no one in the galaxy will even remember we existed." Watched the last of the lights fade into the stars. Tears ran down her cheeks, but she did not wipe them away. She let them fall. "So that is it, we just wait here to die." Jin turned to face her. His eyes were burning with something that had never seen before. It was not fear. It was not sadness. It was fury, pure and absolute fury. "No," he said, "that is not it. That will never be it." Looked at him with confusion. "What can we do? We do not have their technology. We cannot build ships that travel faster than light. We cannot escape our own solar system. We are trapped here." Jin grabbed her shoulders and made her look directly into his eyes. "Listen to me. They made a mistake tonight. They think we are weak because we fight among ourselves. They think we are stupid because our technology is primitive. They think we will simply lie down and die because some aliens told us to." He released her shoulders and stepped back. His voice grew louder, stronger. "But they do not understand humans. They do not know what we are capable of when our backs are against the wall. They have never seen what we can do when we are fighting for our survival. Every great achievement in human history has come from struggle, from pain, from the refusal to give up even when everything seems hopeless. Stared at him. She wanted to believe his words, but the fear was still there. 200 years is not enough time. We cannot develop interstellar travel in 200 years. It is impossible. Jin smiled. It was a fierce smile full of determination. Impossible is what humans do best. 100 years ago we could not fly. 50 years ago we had never been to space. 20 years ago we thought we were alone in the universe. And now we know there are others out there, others who think we are beneath them. He pointed up at the sky where the ships had disappeared. Those creatures just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They gave us a deadline. They gave us a reason to unite. They gave us an enemy to prove wrong. And most importantly, they made us angry. Felt something changing inside her. The fear was still there, but something else was growing beside it. Something hot and bright and defiant. You really think we can do it? You think we can save ourselves? Jin nodded. I do not think, I know, because I know humans. I know that when you tell a human something is impossible, they will break their backs trying to prove you wrong. I know that when you threaten a human's children and they will move mountains to keep them safe. And I know that when you abandon a human and leave them to die, they will survive just to spite you. He pulled out his phone and started making calls. Watched as he connected with generals and scientists and leaders from around the world. She heard him repeating the same message over and over. The aliens have abandoned us. They think we will die. They are wrong. Humanity will survive, and one day we will make them regret ever leaving us behind. That night, as walked back into the observatory, she felt different. The fear was still there, but it was smaller now. In its place was something new, a fire that burned in her chest, a promise that she made to herself and to every human being on the planet. They would not die quietly. They would not fade away like the expected. They would fight. They would build. They would survive. And when they finally met the again, they would make them understand their mistake. The abandoned Earth was about to become something the galaxy had never seen before. The first 100 years were the hardest. They were years of blood and fire and death, but they were also years of hope. After the left, the nations of Earth came together for the first time in human history. There were no more wars between countries. There were no more fights over land or resources. Every human being on the planet understood one simple truth. They would survive together or they would die together. There was no other choice. General Lee became the first commander of the United Earth Military Force. He was a stern man with hair and deep lines on his face. He had fought in 3 wars before the came. He knew what humans could do to each other. But now he had a new mission. Not to fight other humans, but to save them all. Under his command, the nations of Earth pooled their resources. Every scientist, every engineer, every builder worked toward the same goal: survival. The first project was called Deep Haven. It was a network of underground cities built beneath the surface of every continent. A brilliant young engineer led the construction teams. She was small in size but enormous in spirit. She worked 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, pushing her teams to build faster and stronger. The sun will try to burn us, she told her workers. So we will hide where it cannot reach. We will dig deeper than any human has ever dug before. And when the fire comes, we will be safe beneath the ground. The tunnels stretched for thousands of kilometers. They connected cities and countries. They had their own air systems, water systems, and food production facilities. They could support billions of people for decades. But knew that hiding underground was not enough. Survival meant more than just not dying. It meant finding a way to thrive. That was where came in. He was a physicist who had worked on nuclear energy before the visit, but after seeing the alien ships, he became obsessed with understanding their power source. How did they travel between stars? What kind of energy could move a ship faster than light? Spent years studying the data that they had shared with human scientists. Most of it was too advanced to understand, but there were pieces that made sense, clues that pointed toward something incredible. Fusion energy was the first breakthrough. Human scientists had been trying to achieve stable fusion for decades, figured it out in just 5 years. His reactor could produce clean, unlimited energy from water. It was the first step toward matching technology. But did not stop there. He kept pushing forward, kept searching for more answers. And then something amazing happened. A secret military team found something in the Pacific Ocean. It was a small probe that had crashed during their observation of Earth. They did not know it was missing, but humans had found it. Studied that probe for 30 years. It was like a caveman trying to understand a smartphone. But slowly, piece by piece, he unlocked its secrets. He learned how they bent space to travel faster than light. He learned how they harvested energy from the fabric of reality itself. By the time the solar flares began, humanity was ready. The first flare hit on a Tuesday morning. Was 87 years old now. Her hair was white and her body was weak, but her mind was still sharp. She sat in the command center of Deep Haven 1, watching the monitors with calm eyes. The sky above turned orange, then red, then white. The temperature on the surface rose to levels that melted steel. The oceans began to boil. Everything above ground died in an instant. Trees, animals, buildings, everything. But beneath the surface, billions of humans survived. The flares continued for months. Wave after wave of deadly radiation swept across the planet. The old world was completely destroyed. When it finally stopped, the surface of Earth was a burnt wasteland. Nothing remained. Some people wanted to give up. They said there was no point in continuing. The planet was dead. Humanity was trapped underground forever. But others remembered why they had built Deep Haven in the first place. It was never meant to be their final home. It was meant to keep them alive long enough to reach for the stars. Dr. Sora was the one who made that possible. She was a geneticist who had spent her career studying how life adapts to extreme conditions. After the flares, she focused on a new project, making humans stronger. She modified human DNA to resist radiation. She enhanced the lungs to breathe in thin atmospheres. She strengthened the bones to handle different gravity levels. She made the human body tougher, more flexible, more capable of surviving in space. The new generation of humans was different. They were the first true children of the stars, born underground, raised with stories of the abandonment, and designed to survive anywhere in the universe. When finally died at age 93, humanity had already colonized the moon. Her last words were simple: make them regret it. The second century saw humanity spread across the solar system like wildfire. Mars was transformed into a second Earth. Venus was covered with floating cities that drifted above its deadly clouds. The moons of Jupiter became mining outposts and military bases. With each new colony, humanity grew stronger. Each new world taught them new lessons. Each challenge made them more capable. Admiral Han Minyu was born on Mars. He never saw Earth as a green and blue planet. He only knew the red deserts and the underground cities. But he grew up hearing stories about how they had judged humanity unworthy, about how they had left billions to die. Those stories filled him with a cold, patient anger. Not the hot rage of youth, but the calculating fury of a man with a long memory and a longer plan. By the time he became admiral, humanity had built its first fleet of starships. They were crude compared to vessels, slower and less elegant, but they worked. They could travel between stars. They could carry weapons. Minyu stood on the bridge of the Defiance, the flagship of Earth's first fleet. Behind him, through the massive viewport, he could see thousands of other ships, cruisers and destroyers and carriers, all built by human hands, all crewed by human beings who remembered what they had done. His second-in-command, a young woman named, approached him. She had been born on Venus, raised in the floating cities above the acid clouds. She was tough and smart and absolutely loyal to humanity's cause. "Admiral," she said, "the fleet is ready. All 10,000 ships are powered up and waiting for your orders." Minyu nodded slowly. He looked at the stars beyond the viewport. Somewhere out there, they were living their peaceful lives. They had forgotten about Earth. They had marked it as a dead zone in their maps and moved on to other things. They had no idea what was coming. 300 years, Minyu said quietly. 300 years since they abandoned us. 300 years of blood and sweat and sacrifice. 300 years of building and growing and preparing. He turned to face. His eyes were hard as stone. They thought we would die quietly. They thought we would fade away like good little primitives. They were wrong. We did not die. We evolved. We became something they never imagined. Nodded, she understood. Every human in the fleet understood. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Minyu smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator about to reveal itself to its prey. "Set course for space. It is time for humanity to introduce itself to the galaxy, and it is time for them to meet the monsters they created. The fleet moved as one. 10,000 ships carrying millions of humans who had survived the impossible. They left behind the burnt shell of Earth and the thriving colonies of the solar system. They were not looking for peace. They were not looking for friendship. They were looking for the aliens who had abandoned them. And they were going to make sure they never forgot them again. Commander was old now, very old. His skin had become pale and thin. His large black eyes had lost some of their sharpness, but his memory was still perfect. He remembered everything from his long life. He remembered the day he first visited Earth. He remembered standing on the bridge of his ship, looking down at the small blue planet. He remembered watching the primitive humans with their simple cities and their endless wars. He remembered feeling nothing but mild curiosity and complete contempt. He especially remembered the day he delivered his verdict to the Galactic Council. He had stood before the great assembly of alien races and told them that Earth was doomed. He had explained that the sun would kill everything on that planet within 200 years. He had recommended that humanity be left to die. They are not worth saving, he had said. They are violent and divided. They cannot even stop fighting among themselves. The resources required to evacuate them would be better spent elsewhere. Let natural selection take its course. The Council had agreed. Earth was marked as a dead zone in the galactic maps. The coordinates were sealed. No ship was to visit that system again. Humanity was forgotten. That was 300 years ago. Now sat in his chambers reading a report that made no sense. A scouting vessel had passed near the Sol system during a routine patrol. They had detected activity, energy signatures, radio signals, ship movements. This must be a mistake, muttered to himself. Nothing could have survived the solar flares. Our scientists calculated the exact date of their extinction. There is no possible way any humans are still alive. But the report was very clear. The scouting vessel had detected thousands of ships, advanced technology, massive orbital stations. The Sol system was not dead, it was alive. Immediately contacted the High Council. They were as shocked as he was. How could this be possible? The humans were supposed to be extinct. They were supposed to be nothing but bones and dust. The Council decided to send a diplomatic fleet to investigate. 50 warships and 1 ambassador ship. Enough firepower to handle any surprises, but also carrying a diplomat in case communication was needed. Ambassador Vila was chosen to lead the mission. She was granddaughter, a young and ambitious who had built her career on peaceful negotiations with other species. She had never met a human before. She only knew them from old records and her grandfather's stories. Be careful, warned her before she left. If the humans really did survive, they might be angry. They might remember being abandoned. Vila had smiled at her grandfather's concern. They are primitives, grandfather. Even if some of them survived, what could they possibly do against 50 warships? We have nothing to fear from such a backward species. She was wrong. The fleet jumped into the Sol system and immediately detected something that made every crew member freeze in terror. The humans were not just alive. They had built an empire. Earth hung in space before them, but it was not the Earth that had described. The planet was surrounded by massive orbital stations. Huge rings of metal and light circled the world like crowns. The moon had been transformed into what could only be described as a fortress. Weapons platforms covered its surface like scales on a fish. And the ships, oh the ships. They came out of nowhere. One moment the space around the fleet was empty. The next moment they were surrounded by human warships, hundreds of them, then thousands, then tens of thousands. Ships of all sizes, from small fighters to massive battle cruisers that dwarfed even the largest vessels. Vila stood on the bridge of her ambassador ship, unable to move. Her officers were shouting in panic. Their sensors were going crazy. The human fleet outnumbered them 100 to 1, maybe more. This is impossible, Vila whispered. 300 years. They built all of this in 300 years. A transmission crackled through the communication system. A human voice, female, cold and calm and completely in control. This is Admiral of the Terran Dominion. You are entering sovereign human space. State your intentions or be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to respond. Vila's hands were shaking as she opened the channel. This is Ambassador Vila of the Empire. We come in peace. We are here to observe and to establish diplomatic relations. We mean you no harm." There was silence on the other end. Then the voice spoke again, and this time there was something dangerous in it, something that sounded almost like amusement. We remember the... Vila felt a chill run down her spine. "Yes, we visited your planet 300 years ago. We are pleased to see that some of you survived the solar events. We had assumed that." "You assumed we were dead." The Admiral's voice cut through like a knife. "You assumed that because you left us to die. Your commander stood before your council and said we were not worth saving. He said our extinction was natural selection. He said the galaxy would not even notice when we were gone." Vila's mouth went dry. How did they know what it said? That meeting had been private, classified. I do not know what you're talking about. We simply..." "Stop lying." The Admiral's voice was ice now. "We captured one of your probes 3 centuries ago. It contained all of your council recordings. We know exactly what you said about us. We know exactly what you decided. We have spent 300 years remembering." Vila looked at her tactical officer. He was pale with fear. His screens showed the human fleet surrounding them like wolves around sheep. There was no escape. If the humans wanted them dead, they would be dead in seconds. "What do you want from us?" Vila asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I want you to look around you, Ambassador. I want you to see what your abandonment created. Look at our ships. Look at our weapons. Look at the empire we built while you forgot we existed." Vila looked. She saw sleek warships with weapons that glowed with strange energy. She saw carriers launching fighters that moved faster than anything they had ever built. She saw a military force that made her 50 warships look like children's toys. "You did this in 300 years, Vila asked. "How is that possible?" "Because you made us angry," the Admiral replied. "Because you gave us something to prove. Because every human child born after your departure was raised on stories of the aliens who abandoned us. They grew up wanting to show you how wrong you were. They dedicated their lives to becoming stronger, faster, smarter. They turned their fury into fuel and their hatred into progress." Vila felt tears forming in her large black eyes. This was not supposed to happen. The humans were supposed to be dead. This was not fair. "Please," she said. "We do not want war. We just came to see what happened. We meant no disrespect." There was a long pause. Then the Admiral spoke again. "No disrespect. You condemned 8 billion people to death without even warning them. You watched them from orbit like insects and decided they did not deserve to live. That is not disrespect, Ambassador. That is murder." The communication channel went silent. Vila stood frozen, waiting for the attack that would surely come. But instead, something else happened. A new message appeared on her screens, coordinates, and a simple instruction. "You will follow these coordinates exactly. You will not deviate. You will not attempt to contact you will be escorted to Earth. There you will answer for what your people did. If you try to run or fight, you will be destroyed. This is not a negotiation. This is an order." Vila had no choice. She gave the command, and her fleet began moving toward Earth, surrounded on all sides by human warships. As they traveled, she looked out the viewport at the passing ships. She saw human faces through the windows, young men and women in military uniforms. They stared back at her with eyes full of cold recognition. They knew who she was. They knew who her people were, and they had been waiting for this day for 300 years. They had returned to the planet they had abandoned. And now they were going to face the consequences. The shuttle descended through the clouds above Earth. Ambassador Vila sat in her seat, looking out the small window at the world below. She could not believe what she was seeing. This was supposed to be a dead planet. This was supposed to be a burnt wasteland. But instead, she saw cities. Massive cities that stretched across the land like silver rivers. Towers that reached into the sky higher than anything they had ever built. Gardens and forests that covered the spaces between. The surface of Earth had been completely rebuilt. Beautiful, is it not? Vila turned to see a human officer sitting across from her. He was young, with dark hair and sharp eyes. His uniform was crisp and decorated with medals. He had introduced himself as Lieutenant, her escort for the journey to the surface. "I do not understand," Vila said. "The solar flares destroyed everything. How did you rebuild all of this?" Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We did not rebuild. We made it better. The old Earth was weak. It was a planet of divided nations and wasted resources. The new Earth is united, stronger. We transformed every inch of this world into a monument of human survival. The shuttle landed on a platform in the center of the largest city Vila had ever seen. It made the capital of the empire look like a small village. Buildings of glass and metal rose around her on all sides, reaching so high that their tops disappeared into the clouds. As she stepped off the shuttle, Vila noticed the people. They were everywhere. Humans of all ages, walking and working and living their lives, and they were all watching her. Some with curiosity, most with cold hostility. "They know who you are," said. "They know what they did. Every human child learns about your abandonment in school. It is the first thing we teach them. Never forget, never forgive." Vila lowered her eyes. She wanted to say that she was not even alive when the abandonment happened. She wanted to say that it was not her fault, but she knew that would not matter. To these humans, she was not an individual. She was a symbol of everything her people had done wrong. The walk to the council building took 20 minutes. Vila was surrounded by armed guards the entire time. She was not a prisoner, they told her. She was a guest, but she noticed that the guards never let her out of their sight. The Terran High Council met in a massive chamber at the heart of the city. It was round, with seats rising in circles around a central platform. Hundreds of human officials sat in those seats, watching as Vila was led to stand before them. At the center of it all sat Chancellor No. He was an older man with hair and a calm face. He wore simple clothes without decorations or symbols of power, but when he looked at Vila, she felt the weight of his authority crushing down on her. "Ambassador Vila," he said, his voice was quiet but clear. "Welcome to Earth. I trust your journey was comfortable." Vila nodded. "Yes, Chancellor, thank you for receiving me." "Let us skip the pleasantries," leaned forward in his seat. "You know why you are here. 300 years ago, your people came to this planet. They studied us. They observed us. And then they left us to die. Chancellor, I understand that you are upset, but I must point out that I was not alive during those events. I cannot be held responsible for decisions made by my ancestors." "Can you not?" raised an eyebrow. "Tell me, Ambassador, when your grandfather stood before the Galactic Council, did any speak against him? Did anyone say that maybe, just maybe, leaving 8 billion people to burn was wrong?" Vila was silent. She knew the answer. No one had spoken against. The council had agreed unanimously. Humanity was not worth saving. "Your silence is answer enough." Stood from his seat and walked down to the platform where Vila stood. He was shorter than her, but somehow he seemed to tower over her. 8 billion people, he said. "Do you know how many that is? It is impossible to truly understand, but let me try to help you. It is mothers and fathers. It is children and grandparents. It is artists and doctors and teachers and farmers. It is 8 billion stories, 8 billion dreams, 8 billion lives. All of them burned away because your people decided they were not worth saving." Vila felt tears running down her face. "We did not know. We did not think you could survive. We thought it would be quick and painless." "But we did survive," replied, "and it was neither quick nor painless. Do you want to know what it was like? Do you want to know how we lived through your natural selection?" He waved his hand, and holographic images appeared around them. Images of burning cities, images of people fleeing underground, images of the sky turning red with fire. The first wave killed 2 billion people in a single day. They did not have time to reach the shelters. They burned alive in their homes, in their streets, in their schools. Children screamed for their parents while their skin melted from their bones. Vila turned her face away, but grabbed her chin and forced her to look. "No, you will watch. You will see what your people condemned us to." The images continued. Crowded underground tunnels, people dying of radiation sickness, food running out, water becoming scarce, wars between survivors over basic resources. "Another 3 billion died in the first decade," continued. "Disease, starvation, violence. We tore each other apart trying to survive, and through it all, we knew that there were somewhere in the galaxy, living their peaceful lives, having already forgotten that we existed." Vila was sobbing now. "Please stop, please." But did not stop. He showed her image after image, the slow recovery, the building of new societies underground, the first ships leaving Earth, the colonization of Mars and Venus and Jupiter's moons. "We survived because we refused to die," said. "We rebuilt because we were too angry to give up. Every ship in our fleet, every weapon we carry, every piece of technology we developed, all of it was built on the foundation of our hatred for you." He finally stepped back and returned to his seat. Vila stood alone on the platform, surrounded by hundreds of silent human faces. "What do you want from us?" Vila asked. Her voice was broken. "If you want revenge, then take it. Destroy our fleet. Kill me. I cannot stop you." Shook his head slowly. "If we wanted you dead, you would already be dead. We have the power to crush your entire empire in a matter of months. Our fleet is larger than anything the galaxy has ever seen. Our weapons are more advanced than anything you can imagine." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But we are not going to destroy you. Not because we forgive you. We will never forgive you. But because destroying you would make us no better than you were." Defense Minister Shin rose from her seat. She was a younger woman with cold eyes and a military bearing. She pressed a button, and tactical displays appeared around the chamber. "This is the current state of galactic power," she said. "The Empire controls 73 star systems, impressive by galactic standards, but the Terran Dominion now controls 47 systems, and we have only been expanding for 100 years. She pressed another button and the display changed. "This is our military strength: 200,000 warships, 15 million active soldiers, weapons that can destroy planets with a single shot, technology that surpasses anything they have developed." Vila stared at the numbers in disbelief. How had they grown so powerful so quickly? "We are not asking for your permission," continued. "We are not seeking your approval. We are simply informing you of the new reality. Humanity is now a major power in this galaxy, and we intend to stay that way." Spoke again. "Go back to your people, Ambassador. Go back to your grandfather and your council. Tell them what you have seen here. Tell them that the species they abandoned has returned. Tell them that we remember every life they let die. And tell them this." He leaned forward, his eyes burning with 300 years of inherited fury. "We are no longer the primitives you left behind. We are what your abandonment created. We are stronger than you. We are smarter than you. We are more determined than you can possibly imagine. And if you ever threaten us again, if you ever try to judge us unworthy again, we will show you exactly how wrong you were." Vila nodded slowly. She understood. They had created their own worst nightmare, and now they would have to live with it forever. The High Council gathered in emergency session. They had not faced a crisis like this in 1,000 years. The chamber was filled with the most powerful leaders of their empire, all of them staring at the reports that Ambassador Vila had brought back from Earth. Commander sat in his seat, looking older than he had ever looked before. His skin was almost white now. His hands trembled as he held the data tablet. Everything he had believed for 300 years was wrong. The humans had not died. They had not faded away. They had become something terrible. "This cannot be accurate," one council member said. 200,000 warships, technology superior to ours. This must be exaggeration." Vila shook her head. "I saw it with my own eyes, honored council member. I walked through their cities. I stood before their leaders. I watched their fleets move through space. Every word in my report is true. The humans have surpassed us." Another council member stood up. "Then we must strike now, before they grow even stronger. We will gather our entire fleet and crush them before they become a real threat." "And how many ships do we have?" Vila asked quietly. 12,000, 15,000, they have 200,000. We would be destroyed before we even reached their borders." The council fell into silence. They had never faced an enemy they could not defeat. They had always been the most powerful force in their region of space. Now they were faced with a species they had dismissed as worthless, and that species had become stronger than them. Finally spoke. His voice was weak and filled with regret. "This is my fault. I was the one who condemned them. I was the one who said they were not worth saving. I created this monster." "Grandfather, you could not have known," Vila said gently. "No one could have predicted that they would survive." "That is exactly the problem." Looked up at the council with tired eyes. "We did not predict it because we did not believe it was possible. We saw the humans as primitive animals. We never considered that they might be more than what they appeared to be. We judged them without understanding them. And now we must live with the consequences of that arrogance." In the months that followed, the galaxy changed. Word of the Terran Dominion spread quickly. Other species learned about the humans who had survived the impossible. They learned about the abandonment. And they learned that humanity was offering something they had never offered: a hand of friendship. The message went out to every corner of known space. If you have been abandoned, ignored, or exploited by the great powers of this galaxy, Earth welcomes you. We know what it is like to be left behind. We will not do to others what was done to us. The response was overwhelming. Species that had suffered under indifference for centuries saw a new hope. A reptilian race that they had used as cheap labor for generations. The bird-like beings who had been strip-mined by corporations. The plant-based creatures who had been membership in the Galactic Council because they were considered too different. They all came to Earth. They all asked for alliance. Admiral Moonsira welcomed them personally. She stood on the observation deck of the Vengeance, the largest warship humanity had ever built, and watched as ships from a dozen different species approached Earth. It was a sight that would have been unimaginable 100 years ago. Now it was the beginning of something new. A young stood beside her. Her name was. She was one of the first of her kind to defect from the Empire after learning the truth about the abandonment. She had been only a child when she first heard the stories about humans. She had grown up believing they were monsters. Now she understood that the real monsters were her own people. "I still do not understand," said, watching the incoming ships. "After everything my people did to you, why do you help others? Why do you not simply conquer and dominate like every other powerful species in the galaxy?" Sierra looked down at the young. Despite her initial anger, she felt a strange sympathy for this child who had inherited a guilt that was not her own. "Because we know what it feels like," Sierra said. "We know the pain of being abandoned. We know the despair of being told you are not worth saving. We know the fury of having to claw your way back from extinction while the universe ignores you." She turned to look out at the stars. "When you have experienced that, you have two choices. You can become like those who hurt you. You can let your pain make you cruel. You can decide that since no one helped you, you will never help anyone else." Nodded slowly. "That is what most species would do." "Yes, it is, and that is exactly why we chose differently." Sierra placed a hand on shoulder. "We refuse to become what they were. We refuse to look at weaker species and see them as worthless. We refuse to abandon anyone the way we were abandoned, not because we are saints, not because we are perfect, but because we remember how much it hurt, and we will not cause that pain to others." The alliance grew quickly. Within a year, 15 different species had joined the Terran Dominion. They brought their own ships, their own technology, their own people. And in return, humanity offered them protection, respect, and something they had never had before, a voice that mattered. The Empire watched with growing fear. Their former subjects were abandoning them. Their influence was shrinking. The species they had ignored and exploited were now standing under the banner of the humans they had left to die. Commander died on a quiet evening, surrounded by his family. His last words were a warning that no one wanted to hear. "We made the greatest mistake in the history of our species, and we will pay for it for generations to come." Chancellor No addressed the United Species of the Terran Alliance at a massive ceremony on Earth. Representatives from 20 different worlds stood before him, looking up at the human who had led his people from extinction to galactic power. 300 years ago they came to Earth, began. They looked at us and saw nothing of value. They decided that we were too primitive, too violent, too divided to deserve survival. They sealed our fate and walked away without a second thought. He paused, letting his words echo through the chamber. "They were wrong about us. Not because we are perfect. We are not. Humanity has made countless mistakes throughout our history. We have been cruel and selfish and destructive. But we have also been kind and generous and creative. We have the capacity for both great evil and great good. And when we were pushed to the edge of extinction, we discovered something important about ourselves." Looked around at the diverse faces watching him, and defectors, beings of a dozen different species, all united under a common cause. "We discovered that we are survivors. We discovered that we are builders. We discovered that we can take the worst disaster imaginable and use it to create something better. And we discovered that we do not want to be alone in the universe." He raised his hand, pointing toward the stars visible through the chamber's massive windows. The old powers of this galaxy believed that strength meant dominance. They believed that powerful species should rule over weaker ones. They believed that the galaxy was a competition where only the strongest deserved to survive. Shook his head slowly. They were wrong. True strength is not about crushing others. It is about lifting them up. True power is not about making others fear you. It is about making others trust you. True greatness is not about what you take from the universe. It is about what you give back to it. He stepped forward, his voice rising with passion. Let this be the message we send to every corner of the galaxy. Humanity does not forget the pain of abandonment, but we also do not become like those who abandoned us. We remember so that we can do better. We survived so that we can help others survive. We rose from the ashes so that we can light the way for those still in darkness. The chamber erupted in applause. Species that had been enemies for centuries stood side by side, united by the words of a human leader. The remaining council members watched the broadcast in silence. They saw their former empire crumbling. They saw species they had controlled for generations now standing proudly under the human banner. They saw the future, and they were not part of it. Ambassador Vila stood before them one last time. "We can fight this," she said, "or we can learn from it. The humans have offered us a choice. We can continue to be what we were, or we can become something better." The council argued for days. Some wanted war, some wanted isolation, but eventually the truth became clear. The old empire was over, the galaxy had changed, and they would either change with it or be left behind. Back on Earth, Admiral Sira stood on the observation deck of the Vengeance, looking out at the new Alliance fleet. Ships of every shape and size, crewed by beings of every species, all working together toward a common goal. Stood beside her, no longer a frightened defector but a proud officer in the Alliance Navy. "Do you think we can really change the galaxy?" asked. Sira smiled. It was a warm smile full of hope and determination. "We already have," she replied. 300 years ago, they returned to Earth expecting to find ruins. They found something else instead. They found a species that refused to die. They found a civilization that turned suffering into strength. They found the future." She turned to face the young. "And that future belongs to everyone who chooses to be part of it. Not because they are strong or weak, powerful or primitive, but because they are willing to stand together and build something better than what came before." Nodded slowly. For the first time in her life, she felt proud to be standing beside humans, proud to be part of something larger than herself, proud to be part of the species that the galaxy had once abandoned. They had returned to Earth expecting ruins. They found gods. And those gods had decided that their power would be used not to destroy but to create, not to punish but to heal, not to dominate but to unite. That was the true legacy of humanity's survival. That was the lesson the galaxy would never forget.